I woke up on a Tuesday morning in my Phoenix, Arizona subdivision to find a chain stretched across what had been my driveway access for the past 8 years. And beyond it, fresh asphalt still steaming in the early desert heat. The entire shared easement that connected my property to the street had been repaved overnight. New yellow lines divided it into neat parking spaces, labeled HOA visitor parking only. A bright red sign warned that unauthorized vehicles would be towed at owner's expense. My car sat trapped in my garage, boxed in by what looked like a municipal parking lot that hadn't existed 12 hours earlier. I stood there in my pajama pants and yesterday's t-shirt, coffee mug frozen halfway to my mouth, trying to process what I was seeing. The asphalt crew had worked quietly enough that I'd slept through the entire operation. They must have started around midnight and finished before dawn. Professional job, expensive, and completely, utterly illegal. My name is Yates Shepherd, and I'm a land surveyor by trade. I spend my days measuring property lines, recording easements, and making sure everyone knows exactly where their land ends and their neighbor's begins. I know property law the way a chef knows knives. And I knew, standing there looking at that chain, that the Saguaro Heights Homeowners Association had just made the biggest mistake of their bureaucratic lives. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The chain, the new striping, the tow warning sign, the entire length of the former driveway. I documented everything from multiple angles, making sure to capture the timestamps. Then I walked the perimeter, photographing where the new asphalt met my property line and the boundaries of the recorded easement. The easement itself was a matter of public record. When this subdivision was developed in 2015, the builder had created a shared access drive that served 3 properties. Mine, the house directly behind me, and the corner lot next door. The easement was recorded with Maricopa County and gave all 3 properties permanent, irrevocable access to the street. It wasn't HOA common area. It was a private easement with specific, legally protected users. I was halfway through my documentation when I heard a screen door slam. A woman emerged from the corner lot, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, work boots already laced. She stopped dead when she saw the chain. "What the hell is this?" She walked over to stand beside me, hands on her hips. "Did they seriously pave our driveway overnight?" I showed her the photos on my phone. "I'm Yates, by the way. We've waved at each other a few times. Deanna Torres, civil engineer." She took my phone and scrolled through the images, her expression growing darker with each swipe. "They can't do this. This is a recorded easement." "I know." "We have legal access rights." "I know." She handed back my phone. "So what's the plan?" I liked her immediately. No panic, no drama, just straight to the solution. "First, I'm going to finish documenting everything. Then I'm going to pull our easement records and the HOA bylaws. Then I'm going to have a very educational conversation with whoever authorized this. I want in." Deanna pulled out her own phone and started taking pictures. "That's my truck in my driveway, and I need it for a job site inspection this morning. They just cost me a workday. The 3rd property owner should know too." I gestured toward the house behind mine. "Mr. Peterson. He's in his 70s. This is going to give him a heart attack." Deanna finished her photos and looked at me. "We should go together, show a united front." 20 minutes later, the 3 of us stood at the chain. Gerald Peterson leaned heavily on his cane, his face red with anger and stress. He'd lived in that house for 40 years, back when this whole area was still orange groves and empty desert. The subdivision had grown up around him. "They've been trying to force me out for years," Gerald said, his voice shaking. "This is just their latest stunt. They want my land for some kind of community center." "Did they give you any warning about this?" I asked. Nothing, not a word. Gerald pointed at the tow sign with his cane. I called the HOA emergency number. Got some woman named Patricia who told me the board had voted to reclaim underutilized common areas for community use. I told her this isn't common area. She hung up on me. Diana and I exchanged glances. Patricia. That would be Patricia Mercer, the HOA president. I knew her by reputation. A middle-aged woman who'd moved into the neighborhood 3 years ago and immediately began campaigning to improve community standards. She'd been elected president last year on a platform of stricter enforcement and better amenities. Apparently, better amenities included stealing other people's driveways. Okay, I said. Here's what we're going to do. Gerald, can you get to your car through your backyard? There's a gate, but it's been locked for years. We'll help you open it. You need to be able to get out if there's an emergency. Diana, can you work from home today? I'll reschedule the inspection. She was already texting. But I bill at $200 an hour and I'm documenting every minute of lost work. Good, keep track of everything. Every expense, every delay, every consequence. I pulled up my contacts. I'm calling my title company first to get certified copies of the easement. Then I'm requesting an emergency hearing with the HOA board. They won't meet with you, Gerald said bitterly. They'll hide behind their management company. Then I'll go to the management company, and if that doesn't work, I'll file in court. I looked at both of them. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. They clearly put money and planning into this. They're not going to back down just because we complain. Diana's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her jaw tightened. Email from the HOA. Important community update. New visitor parking available. They're bragging about it. She forwarded the email to both of us. I read it with mounting disbelief. The HOA newsletter announced with cheery enthusiasm that they'd improved community infrastructure by creating additional visitor parking. It praised the board's forward-thinking leadership and included before and after photos. In the before photo, our easement looked like exactly what it was, a private driveway. In the after photo, it looked like a shopping center parking lot. There was no mention of the 3 property owners who just lost their access to the street. No acknowledgement that the underutilized space was actually private property. Just self-congratulatory nonsense about community enhancement. They're spinning this as an improvement, Diana said. Getting ahead of the complaints, which means they know exactly what they did. I forwarded the email to my personal account for evidence. They're not stupid. They're betting we won't fight back. Gerald made a disgusted sound. Most people wouldn't. It's too much hassle, too expensive. They just park on the street or move. I'm not most people. I started walking toward my house, and I'm definitely not moving. The title company couldn't get me the certified easement copies until the next day, but they confirmed over the phone what I already knew. The easement was valid, recorded, and granted perpetual access rights to the 3 affected properties. The HOA had no authority to revoke or modify it. I spent the rest of the morning digging through the HOA's governing documents. Every homeowners association in Arizona operates under a set of rules, the CC&Rs, the bylaws, and the architectural guidelines. All of it is public record, filed with the county when the subdivision is created. I downloaded every document related to Saguaro Heights and started reading. It took me 3 hours to find what I was looking for, but it was there in black and white. Article 7, Section 3 of the HOA bylaws. The association shall not alter, modify, or impair any recorded easements, rights-of-way, or other property rights without written consent of all affected parties and proper legal authorization. They'd violated their own rules. Not just the law, but their own internal bylaws that they were legally required to follow. This was getting better and better. I called the HOA management company and got transferred 4 times before reaching someone willing to talk to me. Her name was Jennifer, and she sounded tired. "Mr. Shepherd, I understand your concern, but the board has already made their decision." "The board doesn't have the authority to make that decision," I said. "They paved over a recorded easement without consent from the easement holders. That's illegal." The board consulted with their attorney before proceeding. Then their attorney is incompetent, or they didn't tell him the truth about the easement. I kept my voice level, professional. "I'm requesting an emergency board meeting to resolve this. The next regular meeting is in 3 weeks. This is an emergency. 3 property owners have been denied access to their homes." Jennifer sighed. "I'll pass your request to the board president. But Mr. Shepherd, between you and me, you should know that Patricia is very committed to this project. She's not going to reverse course easily. Then she's going to learn about easement law the hard way." I hung up and immediately called my attorney. Rick Chen had handled my home purchase and various property issues over the years. He was sharp, aggressive, and didn't suffer fools. When I explained the situation, he laughed out loud. "They paved over your easement, overnight, without notice, complete surprise. That's the dumbest thing I've heard all month, and I had a client try to claim adverse possession of a Walmart parking space last week." I heard typing. "Okay, I'm looking at your easement now. This is crystal clear. You have permanent access rights. Send me everything you've documented and I'll draft a demand letter. We'll give them 72 hours to restore access before we file for an emergency injunction." "How strong is our case?" "Yates, this isn't even a close call. They committed civil trespass, violated your property rights, and probably broke a dozen local ordinances by doing unpermitted construction work. We're going to destroy them." I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "Good. But I need to warn you. Even if we win quickly, which we will, the HOA might drag this out on principle. Board members sometimes get vindictive. Are you prepared for this to get messy?" "I'm prepared to see it through to the end." "That's what I like to hear. Send me everything and I'll have a letter ready by tomorrow morning." After I hung up with Rick, I walked over to Deanna's house. She answered the door in reading glasses, a laptop balanced in one arm. "I've been going through the CC and Articus," she said before I could speak. "The HOA has no claim to this easement. It's not mentioned anywhere in their property descriptions. My attorney says the same thing. He's drafting a demand letter." "Good." She stepped aside to let me in. Her living room was neat and organized, with architectural drawings tacked to one wall and a bookshelf full of engineering texts. A border collie mix wandered over to sniff my shoes. "That's Cooper. He's friendly." I scratched Cooper's ears. I wanted to coordinate our approach. If we're all sending separate demands, it might confuse things. Maybe we should pool resources. I was thinking the same thing. Deanna closed her laptop. "Are you working with anyone specific?" "Rick Chen, real estate attorney downtown." "I know Rick. He did some contract work for my firm last year. He's good." She sat down on the couch and pulled off her glasses. "What's this going to cost?" "For an injunction, few thousand probably, but if they fight it, could go higher." "Worth it." She said it without hesitation. "I'm not letting them steal my property access, because they couldn't be bothered to read an easement." We spent the next hour comparing notes and documents. Deanna had already pulled the HOA's articles of incorporation, their last 3 years of meeting minutes, and the original subdivision plat. She worked like I did, methodical, thorough, building an ironclad case before making a move. "Look at this," she said, turning her laptop so I could see. The HOA's articles specifically state they are responsible only for common areas as defined in the CC and Artic S. The easement isn't listed. They have no jurisdiction over it, so they knowingly exceeded their authority, or they were too lazy to check. Deanna scrolled through another document. Either way, it's actionable. Her doorbell rang. Cooper barked once and trotted to the door. Deanna opened it to find Gerald standing there, looking exhausted. "They towed my car," he said. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Deanna said very quietly, "What?" "I managed to get the back gate open, drove around to the front to go to the pharmacy. When I got back, I parked in one of those new visitor spaces because my driveway was blocked. Came out 20 minutes later and my car was gone." Gerald's hands were shaking. "There's a tow company phone number on the sign. They want $350 to release my car." I felt a cold, focused anger settle over me. This had just escalated from property dispute to active harassment. "Did you get the tow truck company's information?" Desert Eagle Towing. "They said the HOA has a contract with them to patrol the neighborhood." Diana was already on her laptop. "That's not legal. You can't tow a resident's car from visitor parking for a short-term stop. The HOA can if they've posted proper signage and the parking is designated for visitors only," I said. "It's a technicality, but it's enforceable." Gerald sank into a chair. "I can't afford $350 right now. I'm on a fixed income." "You're not paying it." I pulled out my phone and called Rick again. "We have an escalation. They just towed one of the affected property owners." Rick swore creatively. "Okay, that changes things. That's targeted harassment. I'm going to file for an emergency temporary restraining order tonight. Can you get me an affidavit from the property owner who was towed?" "Yes." "Do it now. I'll need it in the next 2 hours to file before the courthouse closes." I looked at Gerald. "Can you write down exactly what happened? Date, time, where you parked, how long you were gone, everything." "I can do that." Deanna was already pulling up a blank document on her laptop. "I'll type while you talk, Gerald. We'll get this done fast." We spent the next 90 minutes preparing Gerald's affidavit. He described the blocked driveway, his need to access the pharmacy for blood pressure medication, the 15 minutes he'd spent inside his house, and his discovery that his car had been towed. Deanna typed every word while I verified details and took additional photos of the tow warning signs. When we finished, I drove to Rick's office downtown and hand-delivered the affidavit. He was already drafting the motion for a temporary restraining order. "This is good," he said, scanning Gerald's statement. "A senior citizen with medical needs, blocked access, and predatory towing. The judge is going to hate this. When will we hear something?" "I'll file within the hour. We should get an emergency hearing tomorrow or Thursday." Rick looked up from his computer. "In the meantime, tell your neighbors not to park anywhere the HOA can tow them. Park on the street if you have to. Don't give them any more ammunition." I drove back to Saguaro Heights as the sun was setting, painting the desert mountains orange and purple. The new parking lot gleamed in the dusk, empty except for one car that I didn't recognize. Someone was actually using it. I parked on the street in front of my house and walked over to Diana's place to update her. She and Gerald were sitting on her front porch, Cooper sprawled between them. "Rick filed the restraining order," I told them. "We should hear about a hearing in the next day or two." "I called a friend at the towing company," Deanna said. "Off the record, she told me the HOA is paying them a bounty for every car they remove, $50 per tow. That's probably illegal." I sat down on the porch steps. "Arizona has regulations about towing contracts and kickback schemes. Getting better and better," Gerald said with grim satisfaction. My phone buzzed. Email from the HOA management company. I opened it and felt my eyebrows climb. They're scheduling a special board meeting for Thursday night, I said, to discuss resident concerns about recent parking improvements. Deanna leaned over to read my phone. That's after Rick's emergency hearing. They're stalling. Doesn't matter. If the judge grants the restraining order, they'll have to restore access immediately regardless of what their board meeting decides. What are the odds the judge rules in our favor? Gerald asked. Based on the law, 99%. I handed Gerald his phone back. Based on reality. Who knows? Judges are unpredictable. But I was more confident than I let on. The facts were overwhelmingly on our side. Recorded easement, no notice, no consent, violation of their own bylaws, and now predatory towing of an elderly resident. If the judge had even a basic grasp of property law, this would be a slam dunk. Wednesday morning, I woke to find an email from Rick with the hearing details. 9 a.m. Thursday morning, Judge Catherine Morrison presiding. I forwarded it to Deanna and Gerald, then spent the day preparing. I printed out every document, the easement, the plat, the HOA bylaws, the email announcements. I organized everything into a binder with color-coded tabs. Deanna showed up at my door around noon with sandwiches and her own binder of documents. "Great minds think alike," she said, eyeing my organizational system with approval. We spread everything out on my dining room table and rehearsed what we'd say if the judge asked questions. Deanna had prepared a timeline showing exactly when the paving occurred, when we discovered it, and when Gerald's car was towed. I had measurements proving the new parking lot sat entirely within the recorded easement boundaries. "We're going to bury them in facts," Deanna said. "No emotion, no drama. Just cold, hard evidence, spoken like an engineer," says the surveyor. She smiled, and I realized it was the first time I'd seen her genuinely smile since this mess started. It changed her whole face, softened the intensity. "We make a good team, we do." I meant it. I'd been single for 2 years after a relationship that had ended badly. I'd gotten comfortable with solitude, with my work and my house and my routines. But there was something easy about working with Deanna. We thought the same way, valued the same things: precision, evidence, getting it right. Thursday morning arrived with typical Phoenix heat, the temperature already in the 90s by 8 a.m. I put on my court clothes, pressed slacks, button-down shirt, tie, professional but not flashy. I wanted to look like someone who respected the legal system and knew what he was talking about. Deanna met me in the courthouse parking lot wearing a blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. Gerald was already inside, dressed in his best suit, looking nervous but determined. Rick found us in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Okay, here's how this works. The HOA will argue they have authority over common areas. We're going to prove this isn't a common area. Keep your answers short and factual. Don't get emotional. Let the evidence do the work." "Who's representing the HOA?" Deanna asked. "Lawyer named Martin Fletcher. He does a lot of HOA work. He's decent, but he's working with bad facts." Rick checked his watch. "We're up in 5 minutes. Any questions?" I had 100 questions, but none that needed answering right now. We filed into the courtroom and took our seats. A few minutes later, the HOA's delegation arrived. Patricia Mercer, 2 other board members I didn't recognize, and their attorney. Patricia was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-40s, expensive highlights, designer handbag, the kind of woman who asked to speak to managers as a hobby. She looked at us with open disdain, like we were children throwing a tantrum over nothing. Judge Morrison turned out to be a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who clearly had no patience for stupidity. She read through the motions quickly while we all sat in silence. "All right," she said finally. "Mr. Chen, this is your motion. Explain why I should issue a temporary restraining order." Rick stood. "Your Honor, the facts are straightforward. My clients own 3 properties with access provided by a recorded easement. The defendant HOA paved over that easement overnight without notice or consent, denying my clients their legal right of access. When one of my clients attempted to use the former easement for its intended purpose, the HOA had his vehicle towed. We're asking the court to order immediate restoration of access pending a full hearing on the merits." Judge Morrison looked at the HOA's attorney. "Mr. Fletcher." Fletcher stood smoothly. "Your Honor, the area in question is common area controlled by the HOA. The board voted to repurpose underutilized space for community parking. The plaintiff's remedy, if any, is through the HOA's internal dispute resolution process." "Do you dispute that there's a recorded easement?" the judge asked. "We dispute that the easement is relevant to the current configuration." Judge Morrison's expression suggested she found that answer lacking. "I'm looking at the easement right now. It's quite specific about providing access to these 3 properties. How is that not relevant?" Fletcher hesitated. "The board believes the easement can be accommodated through alternative access points." "What alternative access points?" Rick interjected. "Mr. Peterson has no backyard access. Miss Torres and Mr. Shepherd have inadequate rear access not designed for daily use. The recorded easement exists specifically to provide front access." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Let me ask this directly. Mr. Fletcher, did the HOA get consent from the easement holders before paving over the easement?" "The board determined consent wasn't required for improvements to common areas." "That's not what I asked. Yes or no? Did you get consent?" "No, Your Honor." "Did you provide any advance notice?" "The board felt that advance notice would lead to unnecessary delays." The judge closed the file in front of her with an audible snap. "Mr. Fletcher, I've been on the bench for 23 years. I've seen a lot of property disputes. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've encountered. Your client paved over a recorded easement without notice or consent. That's a textbook violation of property rights." Patricia Mercer stood up. "Your Honor, if I may, you may not. Sit down." Judge Morrison didn't even look at her. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm granting the temporary restraining order. The HOA has 72 hours to restore full access to the easement as it existed before the paving. That means removing the chains, removing the tow warning signs, and ceasing all towing activity related to these 3 properties. We'll schedule a full hearing for 2 weeks from today to address permanent relief and damages." Fletcher tried again. "Your Honor, removing the parking area will be expensive and disruptive. Then your client should have thought about that before they committed civil trespass." 72 hours, Mr. Fletcher. Make it happen." She banged her gavel. "Next case." We filed out of the courtroom in stunned silence. It had taken less than 20 minutes. In the hallway, Rick was grinning like he'd won the lottery. "That went even better than I expected," he said. "Judge Morrison just handed us everything we asked for." Deanna let out a breath she'd been holding. "So they have to take it all down, all of it. The chains, the signs, everything. And they have to stop towing." Rick looked at Gerald. "Your car situation should be resolved immediately." "I'll contact the towing company today." Gerald's eyes were damp. "Thank you, all of you." Patricia stormed past us with her board members in tow, her heels clicking angrily on the marble floor. She didn't look at us, but I heard her hiss to Fletcher, "This isn't over." "Actually, it kind of is," Rick called after her cheerfully. I should have felt triumphant. We'd won, cleanly and decisively. But Patricia's parting comment bothered me. People who said things like "this isn't over" tended to do something stupid and vindictive. I made a mental note to keep documenting everything. That afternoon, I sat in my living room and watched as a work crew arrived to remove the chains and signs. They worked quickly and quietly, clearly uncomfortable with the assignment. One of them, a kid maybe 20 years old, caught my eye and shrugged apologetically. The parking space striping would remain until the full hearing, according to Rick. The judge had only ordered restoration of access, not complete removal of the parking area. It was a compromise that let the HOA save some face while still giving us what we needed. Diana came over around 6 with a 6-pack of beer and Cooper on a leash. Celebrating seems appropriate. I opened 2 bottles and handed her one. We sat on my front porch and watched the desert sunset. Cooper sprawled at our feet. "Thanks for organizing all of this," Deanna said. "I would have fought this on my own, but having you coordinate everything made it so much easier." "Same here, and your document research was invaluable." "We're a good team." She said it like she was testing the words. "Yeah, we are." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking our beers and watching the neighborhood go about its evening routine. The parking area sat empty. Nobody was using it now that the tow warnings were gone. It was just a pointless stretch of striped asphalt, a monument to bureaucratic overreach. "What do you think Patricia meant when she said it wasn't over?" Deanna asked. "Nothing good." I took a drink. "People like her don't like losing, especially not in public." The judge shut her down pretty hard. "Which means she's embarrassed on top of angry. That's a bad combination." Diana looked at me. "You think she'll try something else?" "I think we need to stay vigilant." I was right to worry. Friday morning, I found a notice taped to my door. Architectural violation warning. According to the notice, my house was in violation of Saguaro Heights architectural standards for unapproved exterior paint color and non-conforming mailbox design. I had 30 days to remedy the violations or face daily fines of $100. I stared at the notice in disbelief. My house had been the same color since I bought it 8 years ago. Beige with brown trim, exactly like half the houses in the neighborhood. My mailbox was identical to the one the builder installed when the house was constructed. Both had been approved in writing by the HOA when I closed on the property. Diana found a similar notice on her door. Gerald got 2, one for his paint color and another for excessive yard ornamentation, which apparently referred to the small ceramic Roadrunner statue his late wife had placed by the front door 15 years ago. "This is retaliation," Deanna said. "We were standing in my driveway comparing notices. They're harassing us for taking them to court." Obviously. I photographed both notices, but it's stupid harassment. These violations are bogus and we can prove it. Gerald shuffled over from his house, notice in hand. "I can't afford to repaint my house. I'm barely making it as is." "You're not repaying anything," I assured him. "These notices are retaliatory and probably invalid. Rick will handle it." I called Rick and explained the situation. He sighed heavily. "This is textbook retaliation. It's also incredibly dumb. They're creating more evidence for our damages claim. Can they fine us for this? They can try. But the moment they actually levy a fine, we add it to our lawsuit. And when we win, which we will, they'll have to pay it all back plus attorney fees." Rick sounded almost cheerful. "Let them dig their hole deeper. It just means a bigger settlement." "What do we do about the notices?" "Respond in writing that you dispute the violations. Request a hearing under the HOA's dispute resolution process. Make them go through every formal step. It'll tie them up in their own bureaucracy." I spent Friday afternoon drafting formal dispute letters for all 3 of us. Deanna helped, her engineering precision making sure every sentence was clear and supported by evidence. We cited the original architectural approval letters, the CC and Articus section on grandfather clauses, and the HOA's own guidelines on prohibited retaliation. They're going to ignore these, Deanna predicted. Probably. But when we get to the full hearing, we'll show the judge that we followed every proper procedure while the HOA acted in bad faith at every turn. She smiled. You're enjoying this. Is that terrible? They started it. They stole our driveway and towed Gerald's car, and now they're making up violations to punish us for fighting back. I'm absolutely enjoying building the case that's going to take them down. Not terrible at all. I'm enjoying it too. Deanna leaned back against my kitchen counter. I don't usually get to do this kind of problem solving. Most of my work is bridges and load calculations. This is different. How long have you lived here? I realized I didn't know much about her beyond her professional skills. 2 years. I moved from Tucson after my divorce. She said it matter-of-factly. Needed a fresh start, new city. Phoenix is good for work, lots of construction. I've been here 8 years. Moved for work too, never married. By choice, partly. I was with someone for 5 years. It didn't work out. I shrugged. I'm pretty particular about things. Not everyone appreciates that. I get it. I color-code my file cabinets and alphabetize my spice rack. My ex-husband thought I was obsessive. You're organized, there's a difference. That's what I said, she grinned. He disagreed, extensively. Cooper wandered over and put his head on my knee, looking up at me with soulful eyes. I scratched his ears and he sighed contentedly. He likes you, Deanna observed. He's not usually this friendly with strangers. Dogs are good judges of character. Better than most people. We spent the weekend in relative peace. The parking area sat empty and accessible. No more notices appeared on our doors. I started to think maybe Patricia had backed down after all. I should have known better. Monday morning I left for work at 7 a.m. and returned around 6 p.m. to find my front yard full of survey stakes. Little orange flags marked every 5 feet along my property line. A notice staked in the middle of my lawn announced that the HOA had commissioned a boundary survey to verify property line encroachments. I called Deanna immediately. Did you get survey stakes? My whole yard looks like a minefield. You too? Yeah, Gerald. I'll check. I heard her knock on a door through the phone, then Gerald's voice. He's got them too. What the hell is this about? They're trying to find violations. Property line encroachments, fence placement, anything they can use against us. I walked my yard examining the stakes. It's harassment, but it's technically within their rights if they have reason to believe there's an encroachment. Do they have reason? No, but they'll claim they do. Rick was less amused when I called him Tuesday morning. They're escalating. The judge isn't going to like this. Start documenting everything. Every notice, every stake, every contact. We're building a harassment case. The survey results came back Wednesday. No encroachments found. My property lines were exactly where they were supposed to be. So were Diana's and Gerald's. The HOA had wasted money on a survey that found nothing wrong. But Thursday brought a new notice. Compliance inspection scheduled. The HOA was sending an inspector to examine our properties for code violations. The inspection was mandatory, would occur between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturday, and we were required to provide access to our yards and exteriors. They're fishing, Rick said when I called, looking for anything they can use. You don't have to let them inside your houses, but you do have to allow exterior inspection under the CC and Articus. What are they looking for? Anything. Peeling paint, dead plants, cracks in the driveway, any excuse to levy a fine. Deanna came over Friday night and we strategized. We need to document the condition of our properties before they inspect, she said. Photos of everything, time stamped and comprehensive. Already on it. I showed her the hundreds of photos I'd taken that afternoon. Every angle of my house, every plant, every inch of hardscape. We think alike. She pulled out her phone showing her own photo documentation. I also reviewed the CC and Articus section on inspections. They can look, but they can't enter any structures without permission. That includes sheds and garages. My garage is full of survey equipment and personal files. There's no way I'm letting some HOA inspector poke around in there. Same. My garage has engineering documents covered by client confidentiality agreements. We spent the evening preparing. Two detail-oriented professionals treating an HOA harassment campaign like a major engineering project. Because that's what it was. A project with goals, obstacles, and measurable outcomes. Our goal was to survive their inspection without giving them ammunition. The obstacle was Patricia's determination to find something, anything, to use against us. The measurable outcome would be whether they could levy any legitimate fines. Saturday morning arrived hot and cloudless. I was up at dawn taking more photos, making sure everything was clean and tidy. At 8:15, two people arrived. A bored-looking man with a clipboard and a tablet, and Patricia Mercer herself. "Mr. Shepherd," Patricia said with a tight smile, "thank you for your cooperation." "I'm cooperating because the CC and Articus require it," I replied evenly. "Not because I think this inspection is legitimate. All inspections are legitimate when authorized by the board. Even retaliatory ones." Her smile vanished. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't." I gestured to my yard. "Feel free to inspect, exterior only. No entry to any structures." The inspector, whose name tag read Mike, walked around my property taking photos and making notes. He measured my grass height, examined my paint, checked my roof line. He spent 20 minutes on a thorough inspection and found absolutely nothing wrong. Patricia looked increasingly frustrated. She tried to find issues herself, pointing out a tiny crack in my driveway and a spot where the grass looked slightly brown. Mike shook his head. "Normal wear and tear, desert climate, nothing actionable." "Look harder," Patricia snapped. Mike gave her a look that suggested he was deeply tired of his job. "Madam, the property is in good condition. I'm not going to manufacture violations." "I'm not asking you to manufacture anything. I'm asking you to do your job." "I am doing my job." Which is documenting actual violations, not imaginary ones. They moved on to Deanna's house, where the pattern repeated. Deanna stood on her porch with her arms crossed while Mike did another thorough inspection and found nothing wrong. Patricia tried to claim that Cooper's water bowl on the porch was a violation of the no unsightly yard items provision. Mike rolled his eyes and marked it as compliant. At Gerald's house, Patricia finally found something she thought would stick. A small section of fence behind his house where the wood had weathered to gray. "That fence is in violation of the maintenance standards," she announced triumphantly. "It needs to be repainted or stained." Mike examined the fence carefully. "How old is this fence?" 20 years, Gerald said. "Original to the house." "Then it's grandfathered under the original architectural approval. Current maintenance standards don't apply." Patricia's face flushed red. "That's not how I interpret the rules." "That's how the CC and Articus are written," Mike said flatly. He finished his notes and looked at Patricia. "I'm done here. 3 properties, 0 actionable violations. I'll file my report Monday." After they left, the 3 of us gathered at Deanna's house. Cooper sensed our mood and stayed close, moving from person to person for reassurance. "They found nothing," Gerald said wonderingly. "Absolutely nothing, because there's nothing to find." Deanna pulled up the CC and Articus on her laptop. "I read every word of these documents. Our properties are in full compliance." Patricia knows that, I said. This isn't about actual violations, it's about making us miserable. Well, it's not working. Diana's jaw was set. If anything, I'm more determined now than when this started. My phone buzzed. Email from Rick. Full hearing scheduled for next Thursday, 10 a.m. Judge Morrison again. Discovery deadline is Monday. Let me know if the HOA has disclosed anything. I forwarded the email to Diana and Gerald. 1 week until the main hearing. That's when we nail them for good. The next few days were a flurry of preparation. Rick requested documents from the HOA, meeting minutes from the board session where they voted to pave the easement, communications about the project, financial records showing what they spent. The HOA's attorney produced a thin folder of materials that raised more questions than it answered. "Look at this," Rick said when I met him at his office Monday afternoon. The board meeting minutes say they voted to improve community parking infrastructure. No mention of the easement. No discussion of property rights. No legal analysis. So they either didn't know about the easement or they deliberately concealed it from the record. Either way, it's bad for them. If they didn't know, they were negligent. If they did know, they were acting in bad faith. Rick flipped through more pages. And get this, they spent $68,000 on the paving project. I whistled. That's a lot of asphalt. They paid a premium for overnight work, probably because they wanted to present it as a fait accompli before anyone could object. Joke's on them. Seriously. Rick closed the folder. I'm going to argue for full damages, cost of our legal fees, Gerald's towing expenses, Deanna's lost work time, and a punitive amount for the harassment and bad faith conduct. We're probably looking at $100,000 plus once we add everything up. Where does a homeowners association get that kind of money? Reserve fund, special assessments, insurance if they have the right coverage. Rick shrugged. Not our problem. They committed the torts. They pay the damages. Thursday morning arrived with a dust storm warning, the sky gone yellow and hazy. I dressed for court again, trying to project confidence I mostly felt. Rick had assured me our case was solid. Judge Morrison had already shown which way she was leaning. This hearing should be a formality, but there's always uncertainty in court. Judges have bad days. Attorneys make unexpected arguments. Facts get misinterpreted. I'd learned not to count on anything until the gavel fell. Deanna met me in the courthouse lobby looking crisp and professional in a navy suit. Gerald arrived a few minutes later, moving slowly but determined. Rick found us at security, and we went upstairs together. The courtroom was the same one as before. Patricia was already there with her attorney and 2 other board members. She looked tired, I noticed. Dark circles under her eyes, her makeup not quite perfect. Maybe this fight was costing her sleep. Good. Judge Morrison took the bench promptly at 10. All right, we're here for a permanent injunction and damages hearing in Shepherd, Torres, and Peterson versus Sagaro Heights HOA. Mr. Chen, you filed the motion. Walk me through what you're asking for. Rick stood. Your Honor, we're requesting 4 things. First, a permanent injunction prohibiting the HOA from interfering with our client's recorded easement access. Second, an order requiring complete removal of the parking area and restoration of the easement to its original condition. Third, compensatory damages for towing fees, lost work time, and legal expenses. Fourth, punitive damages for bad faith conduct and retaliatory harassment. That's a lot. The HOA has engaged in egregious conduct, Your Honor. Even after this court issued a temporary restraining order, they escalated with retaliatory code enforcement actions. Rick handed up a stack of documents. We've documented everything. The manufactured architectural violations, the unnecessary boundary survey, the harassing inspection. All of it occurred after we filed suit. Judge Morrison paged through the documents, her expression growing darker. Mr. Fletcher, is this true? Your client continued enforcement actions against these specific property owners after I issued the TRO. Fletcher stood slowly. Your Honor, the board has a duty to enforce community standards uniformly. The inspections and notices were part of routine compliance activities. Routine compliance that just happened to target the 3 people suing you. The board disputes any claim of retaliation. I'm sure they do. The judge looked at Patricia. Miss Mercer, you're the board president. Did you authorize these enforcement actions? Patricia stood. Yes, Your Honor. The board has an obligation to maintain property values. We were simply doing our jobs. Your job is to follow the law. That includes respecting recorded easements and not retaliating against residents who exercise their legal rights. Judge Morrison turned to Fletcher. Does your client understand that punitive damages are on the table here? Because their conduct post-TRO looks a lot like willful disregard of this court's authority. Fletcher looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, if I could have a moment to consult with my client. You've had weeks to consult. I'm ready to rule. The judge pulled up something on her computer. I've reviewed all the filings. The facts are not in dispute. The HOA paved over a recorded easement without notice or consent. They violated their own bylaws in doing so. They spent $68,000 of member funds on this project. And when the property owners objected, the HOA engaged in what appears to be systematic harassment. She looked up. Here's my ruling. The permanent injunction is granted. The HOA is permanently prohibited from interfering with the plaintiff's easement access. Further, the HOA will completely remove the parking area and restore the easement to its previous condition within 60 days. This includes removing all striping, all signage, and any other modifications made during the paving project. Patricia made a sound of protest. Judge Morrison silenced her with a look. As to damages, the HOA will reimburse Mr. Peterson for his towing fees, $350. They will compensate Ms. Torres for lost work time at her documented hourly rate, $400. They will pay all reasonable attorney fees incurred by the plaintiffs in prosecuting this action. Mr. Chen, I'll need you to file a detailed fee motion within 30 days. Yes, Your Honor. Finally, I'm awarding punitive damages in the amount of $25,000, split equally among the 3 plaintiffs. The HOA's conduct was not merely negligent but willful. They knew or should have known about the easement. They deliberately paved it without notice. And they retaliated when challenged. That kind of conduct cannot be tolerated. The courtroom was silent. Even Rick looked surprised at the punitive damages number. Judge Morrison wasn't finished. I'm also referring this matter to the Maricopa County Attorney for investigation of possible criminal charges. Paving over someone's property access without consent may constitute criminal trespass and property destruction under Arizona law. That will be up to the prosecutors to decide. Fletcher shot to his feet. Your Honor, I must object. Your objection is noted and overruled. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down hard. We filed out in a daze. In the hallway, Rick let out a whoop of triumph. Did that just happen? Did Judge Morrison just award us everything and then some? She referred it for criminal charges, Deanna said, sounding stunned. I didn't think she'd go that far. Patricia's face when she said that, Gerald chuckled. I thought she was going to explode. Rick sobered up slightly. Okay, the criminal referral is serious. If the county attorney decides to prosecute, whoever authorized that paving project could face charges. Probably misdemeanor property destruction, but it's still a criminal record. Good, I said flatly. They earned it. We went to lunch at a restaurant near the courthouse, celebrating with burgers and the good kind of satisfaction that comes from winning completely and cleanly. Rick walked us through next steps. The HOA had 60 days to remove the parking area. He'd file the fee motion within 30 days, and we'd get our checks for damages once the judgment was entered and any appeals period expired. Will they appeal? Deanna asked. They'd be insane to. The facts are overwhelmingly against them, and Judge Morrison gave them a very clear message about further resistance. Rick took a bite of his burger. My guess is they'll comply quietly and hope the criminal investigation doesn't go anywhere. What are the odds of prosecution? I asked. Hard to say. The county attorney's office has limited resources. They prioritize violent crime and major fraud. A property dispute might not rise to the level they usually pursue. Rick shrugged. But the fact that it's an HOA board might work in our favor. Prosecutors don't like officials who abuse their authority. That afternoon, I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The fight was over. We'd won. The driveway would be restored. We'd be compensated, and maybe, just maybe, Patricia would learn that homeowners have rights she couldn't simply ignore. Diana was in her driveway when I arrived, Cooper dancing around her feet. She waved me over. Drink to celebrate, she offered. Absolutely. We sat on her back patio this time, looking out over the desert preserve behind our properties. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and red. Cooper dozed at our feet. Thank you for organizing all of this, Deanna said. I know I already said it, but seriously. You coordinated everything, kept us focused, and made sure we did it right. You contributed just as much. Your document research was crucial, still. She clinked her beer bottle against mine. Partners, partners. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Deanna said, What made you decide to fight this so hard? A lot of people would have just accepted it and moved on. I don't like being bullied, I said. And I really don't like people who think rules don't apply to them. Patricia and her board thought they could do whatever they wanted because they had authority. Someone needed to show them otherwise. You enjoyed it, though, the process. I did, I admitted. Is that weird? Not at all. I enjoyed it too. The research, the strategy, building an airtight case. It was satisfying in a way my regular work isn't. Your regular work is bridges and load calculations, mostly. Some highway design. It's important work, but it's routine. This was different. This had stakes. Personal stakes, I agreed. That's what made it engaging. And the fact that we were clearly right didn't hurt. We talked until full dark, conversation flowing easily from the case to our work to our lives. I learned that Deanna had grown up in Flagstaff, studied at Arizona State, and loved hiking and rock climbing when she could find time. She learned that I'd grown up in Scottsdale, gotten into surveying through a summer job in college, and spent most of my free time restoring an old Jeep in my garage. I should probably go, Deanna said eventually, though she didn't move. Early meeting tomorrow. Same. Neither of us stood up. Cooper snored softly. We should do this again, Deanna said. The talking part, not the HOA battle part. I'd like that. She smiled and stood, offering me a hand up. Dinner sometime when things calm down, definitely. I walked home feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, optimism. Not just about the case, though that was gratifying, but about possibilities, about connection, about someone who understood how I thought and didn't find it strange or obsessive. The next week passed quietly. No new notices appeared on our doors. No HOA representatives came sniffing around. The parking area sat empty and ignored, a reminder of bureaucratic overreach that everyone pretended not to see. Rick filed his fee motion documenting the 32 hours he'd spent on our case. The total came to $9,000, reasonable for what he'd accomplished. The HOA's attorney didn't contest it. Then, 3 weeks after the judgment, I came home to find a work crew tearing up the parking area. They'd started early and worked fast, jackhammering the asphalt and loading it into dump trucks. By the end of the day, the entire parking lot was gone, reduced to dirt and gravel. Diana came out to watch with me. They're actually doing it. They don't have a choice. Still satisfying to see. The next day, the crew returned and repaved the driveway, this time without the striping or signage. Just a plain, functional access drive serving 3 properties exactly as the recorded easement specified. They finished by mid-afternoon and left without ceremony. I walked the length of it, checking the work. Clean edges, smooth surface, proper drainage. They'd done it right this time. I took photos from every angle, documenting the restoration for our records. Gerald shuffled out of his house, leaning on his cane. He stood looking at the driveway for a long moment. "It's over," he said quietly. "It's over," I agreed. He turned to me, his eyes damp. "I've been in this house 40 years, raised my kids here, lost my wife here. I wasn't going to let them force me out." "You didn't. We won." "We won," he repeated like he was testing the words. "We actually won." That Saturday, Deanna knocked on my door at 9 a.m. with Cooper and a bakery box. Breakfast celebration. Gerald's coming too. We sat on my back patio eating croissants and drinking coffee, watching the morning sun burn off the coolness. It felt surreal to be sitting here peacefully after weeks of battle. "The checks came yesterday," Gerald said. "My third of the punitive damages plus the towing reimbursement. $8,500. It's the most money I've had at once in 10 years. "What are you going to do with it?" Deanna asked. "Fix my roof. It's been leaking for 2 winters. I couldn't afford it before." He smiled. "Maybe take my grandkids to the zoo." My check had been the same amount minus the reimbursements. It was nice, but the money wasn't why I'd fought. The principle mattered more. The idea that rules apply to everyone, that authority has limits, that individuals can stand up to institutions and win. "Heard anything about the criminal investigation?" Deanna asked me. "Rick said the county attorney's office opened a file. Whether they'll actually prosecute is still up in the air." We found out 2 weeks later when a sheriff's deputy showed up at Patricia Mercer's house to serve her with a criminal summons. The charge was misdemeanor criminal trespass and property destruction. 2 other board members who'd voted for the paving project got the same charge. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded. People took sides. Some defended Patricia as a dedicated volunteer who'd made a mistake. Others celebrated her downfall. A recall petition started circulating to remove her from the board. I stayed out of the social media drama. It wasn't my fight anymore. We'd won our case. The rest was between Patricia and the legal system. But I did attend her arraignment, sitting in the back of the courtroom as she pleaded not guilty and was released on her own recognizance. She looked diminished somehow, less certain than the woman who'd sneered at us in Judge Morrison's courtroom. The county attorney offered a plea deal, deferred prosecution with community service and restitution. If Patricia completed 6 months of probation and paid her share of the damages, the charge would be dismissed. She took the deal. "It's over," Rick confirmed when he called me with the news. "Patricia and the other 2 board members are on probation. They've resigned from the board. New elections are next month." "Good. The HOA's insurance is covering most of the damages, but the board members are personally liable for the deductible, about $5,000 each. That's on top of the probation and community service. Expensive lesson." "Very." Rick paused. "You did good work on this, Yates. A lot of people would have just accepted the situation. You fought back the right way, methodically, legally, with overwhelming evidence. That's how you win. After I hung up, I walked over to Deanna's house. She was in her garage working on something, Cooper supervising from a dog bed in the corner. "It's really over this time," I told her. "Patricia took a plea deal and resigned." Deanna straightened up, wiping her hands on a rag. "How do you feel?" "Relieved. Vindicated. A little empty, honestly. It's been the focus of everything for weeks. I know what you mean. I keep checking for new violation notices that aren't coming." We stood there for a moment, the garage full of comfortable silence. "So about that dinner," I said. "Are you free Saturday night?" She smiled, the real smile I'd come to recognize. "I'm free. Pick me up at 7. It's a date." Saturday arrived with typical Phoenix heat, but the evening cooled nicely as the sun went down. I picked Deanna up at 7 sharp, and we drove to a restaurant in Scottsdale that overlooked Camelback Mountain. Cooper stayed home with a new chew toy and promises that we'd be back soon. Dinner was easy and comfortable, conversation flowing without effort. We talked about work and family and the future. Deanna had a project coming up that might lead to a promotion. I was considering starting my own surveying company instead of working for someone else. "You'd be good at that," Deanna said. "You're organized and thorough. Clients would trust you." "It's a risk, though. Steady paycheck versus uncertainty." "Sometimes risk is worth it." We lingered over dessert, neither of us wanting the evening to end. When we finally left, I drove the long way back through the mountains, windows down, desert air rushing through the car. "I had a good time," Deanna said as I walked her to her door. "Me too. Do it again sometime. Definitely." She kissed me, brief and sweet, then slipped inside with a wave. I drove home with the radio loud and a ridiculous grin on my face. The next few months settled into a comfortable rhythm. The HOA elected a new board that was far more cautious and respectful of property rights. They repealed several of Patricia's more draconian policies and instituted new oversight procedures to prevent future abuses. Diana and I fell into a relationship that felt natural and right. We had dinner together several times a week, went hiking on weekends, and spent evenings working on projects in each other's garages. She helped me rebuild the Jeep's transmission. I helped her design a custom bookshelf for her office. Gerald became a regular fixture at our gatherings, bringing stories and perspective and really good homemade salsa. He got his roof fixed and started looking healthier, the stress of the fight finally lifting. 6 months after the judgment, Deanna and I were sitting on her back patio when she got a job offer. A firm in Seattle wanted her to lead their bridge design division. Great pay, great title, great opportunity. "Are you going to take it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I don't know." "It's a fantastic opportunity." She looked at me. "But Phoenix is home now. My house is here. You're here. Don't stay because of me." "What if I want to stay because of you?" "Then stay, but be sure." She was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset paint the desert orange and gold. "I'm sure." A year after Patricia's parking lot debacle, Deanna and I bought Gerald's house when he decided to move into an assisted living facility closer to his daughter. We converted it into Deanna's home office and a workshop for my growing surveying business. We knocked down the fence between our properties and built a gate so we could move freely between the spaces. The driveway remained exactly as the restoration crew had left it. A simple, functional access drive serving 2 properties owned by people who understood property rights and respected boundaries. We had a small plaque made and mounted near the street. "Private easement authorized users only." Not because we needed it, but as a reminder. One evening I found Deanna standing by the plaque, Cooper at her feet. She'd been quiet all day, working on something in her office. "What's on your mind?" I asked, just thinking about how things worked out. "A year ago we were fighting an HOA over a stolen driveway. Now look at us." "Now look at us," I agreed. She turned to face me. "I'm glad they stole the driveway." "What?" "I mean, I'm glad we fought back and won, but I'm also glad it happened because it brought us together. We might have stayed polite neighbors forever if Patricia hadn't pulled that stunt." "That's a generous way to look at it." "I'm a generous person." She grinned. "Also, I'm planning to build a new garage workshop and I need a surveyor to make sure the property lines are perfect." "Know anyone who's particular about getting things right?" "I might know someone." We walked back to her house, Cooper trotting ahead. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting long shadows across the desert. Somewhere in the neighborhood someone was mowing their lawn. A car drove past playing music too loud. Normal suburban sounds on a normal evening, but it felt extraordinary because we'd fought for it and won it and built something good from the wreckage of Patricia's overreach. The driveway was ours, legally and permanently. The house was ours. The future was ours. And it had all started with a chain stretched across a driveway and a refusal to accept that authority could simply override rights. Sometimes the fights worth fighting are the ones that seem small to everyone else. Sometimes standing your ground over a parking space means standing up for the principle that you matter, your property matters, and the rules apply to everyone. Diana unlocked her door and Cooper bounded inside, heading straight for his water bowl. She turned to me, backlit by the warm glow of her living room. "Thank you," she said, "for being the kind of person who fights back the right way. Thank you for fighting beside me." "Partners," she said, like she had months ago in the courthouse parking lot. "Partners," I agreed. And we went inside to plan the garage workshop that would sit exactly, precisely, perfectly within the property lines, because some things are worth getting right.